In the next 24 months, like you mentioned, what would be a catalyst in the market that you think would drive exponential growth?
Getting the Clarity Act nailed down. I think the reason why it's kind of been asked backwards, why the Saudis, the UAEs, and Dubais of the world were pushing forward, because they did have some clarity. They were much more welcoming to what was going on over there, when traditionally it's been the U.S. markets that have always been the driver, right? We're the 10,000-pound gorilla that really move markets.
And so I feel like we're on the cusp of seeing a radicalization of accredited investor rules, access to these markets, ownership, identity. A lot's being transformed. A lot because of what you're doing here as well, DigiShares.
What we forget is that we are kind of spoiled here in the U.S. We have access to capital markets. We have access to different financial mechanisms that the world doesn't.
Yeah.
And frankly, the deeper I've gone into this and getting into digital securities is that you're reminded, wow, some people are just happy to have a bank account. But some places, they actually don't trust their bank account because they don't trust the actual, maybe the financial institution or the leadership of that region, that country, or whatever it may be, that their money is safe. So being able to have these distributed networks, different ways to invest, different ways to own assets is actually life-changing to them. And frankly, once you take a step back and look at it, it's like, we're actually making a big impact. This isn't just all about pushing finance, making money. This can legitimately change people's lives and actually put a little bit more stability in maybe an unstable environment for them. And then I run a podcast that's number 8 on Substack for crypto and digital securities called Old Men, New Money.
I think we need to start another podcast called Young Men, No Money.
So we can help turn that around for them. But that's actually, you bring up a really good point. It's like the whole reason for crypto and tokenization and these things that we're doing is that folks can have access. They can come in at a much lower entry point that they never would have access to.
What's going on, family and friends? It's day 1 of Consensus here in Miami. We're right outside of the DigiShares booth, and I've got the head of business development, Phil Larmon. How you doing today, sir?
Rocking and rolling. It's always great to be around peers that are pushing forward our movement.
It's God's work. It needs to be done, and it's happening because of individuals like yourself, sponsors like Ripple Labs. This technology is coming to the forefront. Now, if you don't mind me asking, because DigiShares, I see the total value unlock with tokenized equities from the streamline of cap table management, the ability to potentially leverage against those assets, maybe even spend them at times. What are your thoughts on this forward trajectory of the space? But first, before we talk about that, what's DigiShares?
So DigiShares is an end-to-end tokenization platform, white label. If I can give a sports example, we're like the offensive line. We're there to cover your ass so that you make sure that you issue your tokenization in a safe, secure, and compliant environment. And we sit in the background, no one knows anything about us, but your brand that has all that recognition, that trust, that loyalty, that track record of doing business is forward-facing. So it sits on your domain, it's your brand, your reputation. We sit in the background and just act as the component of the end-to-end, whether it be issuance, investor management, and then enhance the opportunity for liquidity. Liquidity is never guaranteed, as we know, right? It's like artwork, it's worth what it is, and whoever will come in and cash you out of that. But with all these new in-rails and liquidity pools that are coming in, it's not if it's going to happen, it's actually happening right now, and it's happening in a very accelerated manner.
Yeah. A little bit about me, real quick, Phil, is I was a former employee of a tech-enabled platform that tokenized private equities, or at least enabling small-time accredited investors to participate in fractionalized investments where, not everyone could sit on a cap table of SpaceX and deploy $6 million or whatever the minimum is. So the access that tokenization unlocks for everyday individuals like myself is phenomenal. So what you're doing is providing or unlocking so much utility for this space. Now, you mentioned that you are white labeling this for enterprise customers. I know you can't give names, but what are these enterprise customers? Who sees the value that we do?
Yeah. So again, 85% of them I'd say is real estate because it's just a low-hanging fruit. It's easy to understand. We really push the narrative to talk about fractional ownership or fractional interest. It's like back in the day when voice over IP came out, all people really cared about is if I pick up the phone, am I going to have dial tone, right? They don't care that it's actually data packets going through Ethernet. They want to understand that what they want is going to be there when they want it. Now, one of the other opportunities that I want to share is that we actually created a secondary market within real estate called realestate.exchange. Now, things aren't trading at high volumes now, but it's our thesis that in the future, there's going to be AI agents that are portfolio managers that are out there setting the criteria of the type of investments that people want. And then in the beginning stages, they will be bringing it back to a human that will then finally sign off on that purchase. But ultimately, once the full technology is there and people feel a little bit more confident, it'll be fully automated. And that's when I think we're going to start seeing some really neat happenings. It'll move over to PE and VC. There's a great opportunity for secondaries within that market because that's really will lock up your capital. But again, we can skin that and actually go into any asset that's out there, create a secondary for it. And that is a strategic partnership that we have with Texture Capital, where they act as our ATS and our broker-dealer. So that's a fully compliant offering. But before you even get to a secondary market within the platform, let's say life happens, people get divorced, someone dies. I think there's going to be a high usage of this within estate planning because, again, it's a very emotional event that happens. The last thing you want to be doing is fighting over who owns what. If it's tokenized, it can be distributed immediately. And then if someone wants to cash out of it, they can, or they trade it to their family member. If there's some sort of emotional tie to it, they can. It just makes it a heck of a lot easier. But the long story short is, as an issuer, it gives you a lot of flexibility. As an investor, it gives you so much flexibility in terms of you want to exit your position, you want to reallocate your portfolio. And again, in the future, once you'll be able to do that asset-based lending on what's in your wallet, that's when it's really going to explode. But right now, we really need to work on the education. Not trying to use acronyms that the mass medias and the mass consumer doesn't understand, because what good is communication if everybody doesn't know what's going on? And that's when we'll really hit that inflection point and it really takes off.
Good call out on the acronyms, I would say just duplicate words, blockchain versus crypto versus DLT versus Web3. There's just so much jargon out there. The nuts and bolts, I think, are fractionalization, special purpose vehicles.
That's right.
Can I ask you, Phil, what's your background? What sets you up for success, or what sets you up for this, to see the unlock of tokenization?
Well, I'm a former professional football player, so I know that's really not that relevant here. However, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity within tokenization within sports and entertainment. And I'll give you a prime example. There's a development that's happening in Cleveland, Ohio. They're going to do a $2.4 billion renovation. Everybody knows that any cold weather city that has an NFL team, they need to have a domed environment if they ever want to host a Super Bowl. Because that's corporate dollars going there. That's not the traditional fan where they will grin and bear it. A corporate customer, they want to be comfortable.
The bougie customer.
That's right. And so not too long ago, I was talking to the owner of the Orlando Magic, and I was sharing what my philosophy was to do this. When you go into these sports entertainment developments, PE and VC traditionally are not investing in these spaces unless there's a real estate development part associated with it. But what if, when they're doing these developments, they're not going into the city and they're saying, hey, we're going to tax the heck out of you to make this happen? What if you said, why don't the citizens of that city, why don't you invest alongside of us? Come in, it's more of a pull narrative rather than I'm going to jam it down your throat. So it's a good PR thing. So now they're going to be the ones going to the restaurants, staying in the hotels, patroning all those different experiences that you're developing. And now they can also share on the upside rather than you taxing them. And they don't see part of that upside. And then they feel like they're actually getting taken advantage of because they're maybe not seeing the end destination of their tax dollars in their pocket. But again, back to the background, again, that's my tangent, is I actually founded a video notarization platform back in the day, so that got me into blockchain. Then I moved on and I was over the lead sales on the crypto NFT blockchain division at iHeartMedia, and then split time with iHeart Ventures. And then I run a podcast that's number 8 on Substack for crypto and digital securities called Old Men, New Money. All these things, I like to be at the tip of innovation, and these things are hard. And it's not just things, the technology's been there, but we got to push policy. We got to push understanding. So I like tackling those things. And as we come in as a community, I think kind of fills that void I have from the locker room, from sports, that as we're doing right now, we can work together to push this industry forward, help the understanding, and we're doing it with good people.
Yeah, I think we need to start another podcast called Young Men, No Money.
So we can help turn that around. But that's actually, you bring up a really good point. It's like the whole reason for crypto and tokenization and these things that we're doing is that folks can have access. They can come in at a much lower entry point that they never would have access to. On that note, I have a nonprofit that actually helps veterans, athletes, and people that were previously incarcerated transition to life after, leveraging AI, machine learning, and community. Folks like that maybe need a new initiative to say, hey, I can actually invest in that. I don't need to have tens of millions of dollars to do these things. I can participate in the markets, and I can do it in a fractional way.
It's a wonderful time to be alive, especially for someone like myself. I'm 38 years old. I was fortunate to satisfy the accredited investor rules when I was 35, and I was having a conversation with John Deaton. I don't know if you know who he is. He's running for Congress for the state of Massachusetts. He mentioned during our coffee at the Bitcoin conference in Vegas last week, he's like, Ray, I was in the military, I served my country, but I couldn't invest into the companies I wanted to, not until I was in my mid 40s. Yeah. And so it's just so difficult to wrap your mind around just I don't want to say inequalities, but in a way, the system is structured as two-tiered system, and it's pushing, keeping people, sophisticated investors who might not satisfy the monetary threshold of the 200,000 annual income, 300,000 sole or combined household income, or have a Series 6, Series 7, 63, any requirements. It just really sucks, to be very transparent. And so I feel like we're on the cusp of seeing a radicalization of accredited investor rules, access to these markets, ownership, identity. A lot's being transformed. A lot because of what you're doing here as well, DigiShares.
What we forget is that we are kind of spoiled here in the U.S. We have access to capital markets. We have access to different financial mechanisms that the world doesn't.
Yeah.
And frankly, the deeper I've gone into this and getting into digital securities is that you're reminded, wow, some people are just happy to have a bank account. But some places, they actually don't trust their bank account because they don't trust the actual, maybe the financial institution or the leadership of that region, that country, or whatever it may be, that their money is safe. So being able to have these distributed networks, different ways to invest, different ways to own assets is actually life-changing to them. And frankly, once you take a step back and look at it, it's like, we're actually making a big impact. This isn't just all about pushing finance, making money. This can legitimately change people's lives and actually put a little bit more stability in maybe an unstable environment for them.
Shifting gears, if you don't mind, before I wrap things up, and thank you for sharing your time with me, because I know that you need to speak with a lot of people here in this room, but I'm thankful that we get to extend your message to a global audience that are unfortunately not in this room today. Liquidity events are a big thing to you, especially in the equities markets. What are your aspirations for DigiShare? Are you in this for the long term? Do you see an acquisition on the roadmap? What are your thoughts?
I mean, obviously you always build for the long run, right? And anything that comes up is opportunity. You need to look at it as case-by-case opportunity. Do I think, and are there inquiries of, positive outcomes for us? Yes, there are. Do I think it's going to be someone that already has distribution, already has environments where it will extend their existing offering, deliver some efficiencies, maybe streamline some of their processes? Because what folks need to remember is this technology is threatening to some industries. It does move out some of the intermediaries, right? And I think that's one of the lags for this industry is that folks, these bigwigs, needed to figure out, okay, these companies that we have a financial interest in, they're going to be displaced. So how do we replace that revenue from other avenues? And now that those have been figured out, let's just say, now there's only going to be, I think there's some consolidating. I would say that, and again, I have to be careful of what I say. There's a lot of positive conversations going on right now. We're actually in the middle of a growth round right now. So if folks are accredited investors and they're interested in the space, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to talk through that. I'd be surprised if some things don't happen in the next maybe 24 months or so, because we're one of the last OGs that have not been acquired. We're the de facto in Dubai, UAE, and Saudi. We just won Global Innovation at Dubai Connect for Best Prop Tech Innovation. And let's just say there's a lot of positive things going on. And when people like yourself highlight what we're doing, it's always appreciated. But again, we're just here to push the industry forward and help a lot of people.
Yeah. Last question. Let's just say in an event where in the next 24 months, like you mentioned, what would be a catalyst in the market that you think would drive exponential growth?
Getting the Clarity Act nailed down. I think the reason why it's kind of been asked backwards, why the Saudis, the UAEs, and Dubais of the world were pushing forward, because they did have some clarity. They were much more welcoming to what was going on over there, when traditionally it's been the U.S. markets that have always been the driver, right? We're the 10,000-pound gorilla that really move markets. But since we are at an inflection point, and you've got Donald Trump in there, you've got the Larry Finks, the Jamie Dimons of the world. All of them are screaming, we're going to tokenize the world on every major media platform out there. That inflection point when you have technology that meets regulation, that meets also market demand, I mean, this is really going to accelerate. It's going to accelerate really fast. And the way that we practice, we try to make it look like a Web 2 environment, and we use terms like shares and fractional ownership, so people don't get so wrapped up in the analysis paralysis of the technology, and then they don't act.
Yeah.
So as long as we use the same thing and give comparisons of this is like this, of things that they can relate to in their everyday life, this will drive home adoption. I think there's some things that once the Clarity Act gets done, and then you'll see some of these major institutions really throw a lot of money, it'll help a lot of us other players, and we're really strong within upper middle market and below. Rising tide raises all, so we'll be all right, and I think the industry is in a really good position right now.
Yeah.
And that's only going to position DigiShares very well, and hopefully I see you guys everywhere.
Yeah. Like I said, I had to be very careful of what I say, but things are in a very positive environment right now, and we're very bullish on the space.
Phil, this has been a very bullish conversation, and I'm appreciative of your time. And I'll be sure to copy the links in the comments and descriptions below, so those that want to either be a customer of DigiShares or maybe participate in your growth trajectory. Not financial advice, but this is a wonderful opportunity to participate in the space again with feeling. Phil, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you.